Well, hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of Slice of Life. My name is Pastor James. With me today, I got a special guest, Stephanie. Stephanie is a member of our church, leads one of our teams, let me say that, but is also an Air Force individual, which if you've listened for a little bit, you might have heard. I served in the Air Force 10 years, so we've got that behind us as well. And I just thought it'd be kind of a fun conversation today to talk a little bit about the Air Force. So for those of you that have aimed high, you'll enjoy that, I know. But I had to slip that in, right?
Absolutely.
But talking about the Air Force, but really talking about Christianity in that world. And then I think what excites me for you is here you served in the Air Force, still serving the Air Force, Guard or Reserve?
Guard.
Yep. So Air Force Guard, mother, wife, and going to college, working on your MDiv, your Master's of Divinity. That's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And so as we're processing that, I thought it'd be kind of interesting just to talk through what that looks like. So, I served 10 years, Air Force, served mostly stateside, in Northern California, and then all over the U.S. Served for a while in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, and then came back, kind of got out of the military after 10 years, and started my Christian career at that point, let's call it that, which meant I worked retail and tried to pastor at the same time, and learning through and going to college and walking through that process. Now full-time pastor here at Life Church, been full-time pastor for 20 plus years now. So kind of tell us a little bit about your story, at least your journey through the Air Force.
Yeah. So I strongly believe the Air Force was my calling.
Yeah.
Getting that message across to some of my family members wasn't necessarily as easy, but once I put the God said to do this in front of it, people jumped on board. It was great.
Right. It's hard to refute God.
It's really, my mom said, well, I'm not going to argue with God. And I'll tell you what, she packed the best care packages while I was deployed. I did 3 deployments. Every single one, everyone was like, ooh, what you got? What'd your mom send you? And she would send treats for everybody, just awesomely supportive. So I left home at 18. I enlisted right after high school, and I got the job. I went in with a guaranteed job as being a load master, which I didn't know what that job was.
Yeah.
But let me say, if you're going to go into the military and you can go into the Air Force, go be a load master, because it is the best job in the world. And I just kind of fell into it. Originally when I wanted to join, I wanted to be an interpreter, and I wanted to be boots on the ground, doing interviews with people. I thought I was tough.
Right.
And I bombed the language test, just bombed it. Can you even learn to speak English? Bombed it. It was bad. It was so bad. And I'm sitting in my car, just hitting the steering wheel, having this meltdown. God, I'm following you. I'm going.
Yeah.
Why is this so hard? And it's because that's not what he wanted. He didn't want me to do that. He had this much better gem waiting for me. And so I threw Loadmaster on my list kind of flippantly.
Yeah.
And that's what I got.
Right.
And the background of that is a Loadmaster is responsible for cargo operations. So you load the back of a cargo airplane, and then you go anywhere in the world, you unload it. Yeah. And then you just do it all over again. So I got to play with tanks. I got to play with excavators, all this cool equipment. Yeah. And I went to almost 40 countries.
Right. And
what a way to spend your early 20s.
Which is awesome, because when you think about it, so my first 5 years, I was a firefighter, and then I switched my job, and I was an aerial porter.
Yeah.
So we didn't like you guys very much.
No.
Because so those of you who don't know, so basically what would happen is we would get a manifest of what's got to go on a plane. We would figure out how to load it, what it should be loaded. And then we go to the load master, and then they tell us, no, you guys are idiots. Some of them would. And we can't be loaded that way. We've got a weight distribution. We've got the different calculations. No, you can't use 10,000 pound chains. You got to use 25,000,
which are much heavier,
pounds, right?
Much heavier.
So and they got to just stand there as we reconfigured the plane and just kind of pointed. No, move this here, move that there. So it's funny when I found out that that's what you did. I was like, okay, I know that. And we didn't like you guys because of that, but then we were super jealous.
You were jealous.
Completely, because we knew. In fact, I remember one time we loaded FBI to go to Kosovo
Yeah.
to do the war crimes. And I was on, I was loading the planes, get a drive. They're really cool vehicles, man. And they were so super heavy because armor plating, the whole thing. And I was just watching that loadmaster going, you jerk, you got to go over there with them and just spend all that time with these guys talking about what they're doing and the whole thing. And we get like this little bit of time. And so understanding kind of that role of that blessing, like you're saying, that you got to travel. I stayed in McChord Air Force Base. It was mostly in Seattle. I was there loading all the time, and we would just see planes go. And all I could think about is, man, I want to go with you. Going to Hawaii again.
Yeah. And then you break. Right. And then you break in Hawaii if you're really, really lucky.
Yeah.
Oof. Rough.
Hard life, right? Hard life. Yeah. But anyways, go on.
So I did that for about 3 years, and on my last deployment, we were sitting at we're in at the base. It was our last night. Everyone was like pretty happy hanging out, and my leadership came up to me and like, "Hey, let's talk." And I was like, "Okay," I'm dumb, whatever. Like, let's talk. Like, no, let's talk over here. And they told me, "Hey, you just got force retrained. You're out. You're not going to be a loadmaster anymore. Sorry about your luck."
Wow.
And I was like, "Well, what am I going to be now?" And they said, "You're going to be a gunner." And we asked questions, and they think you're going to be on the CV-22, which is nicknamed Widowmaker.
Right.
And I was going to be a gunner, flight engineer, and loadmaster all rolled into one. It was this new career field. And I was like, that's not me. I spent my deployment making cake in a crock pot. Yeah. That's not me.
Right.
And so I kind of hit my knees and I was like, God, is this my exit? Like, is this the exit ramp that I got to take? And I just felt him say, I'm not finished with you yet. Yeah. That we're not done yet. I was like, all right. So I just kind of picked it up, and it was not a fast process, I will say. It was not a fast process of acceptance.
It is the military.
Yeah. So you just kind of have to do it. Yeah. And if I didn't do it, they were going to kick me out. Yeah. And I was like, well, I don't want to get kicked out yet. So I just kind of accepted I was going to do it. And I was flying one of my last missions, and this colonel was on board, and he's asking me my Air Force story. And I just laid it out for him. And I said, this is what I've been doing. This is what I'm about to do. I don't like it, but God said I'm not done with you yet in the military, so I'm going to do it. He said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I think I'd make a good flight attendant. Yeah. The Air Force has flight attendants. I think I'd make a good flight attendant. Yeah. And he said, oh, okay, that's cool. And I didn't think much of it. Come to find out, he knows a guy who knows a guy. And they got me an interview. Because you had to get interviewed and selected for that job. And they got me an interview, and I got selected. And they said, is anyone willing to go to MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida? Yeah. I said, oh, I'm willing. I'll take that one for the team. No problem. And it's just every time I look at it, I'm like, man, God, you had this beautiful puzzle all worked out for me. Right. Like, it was crazy to get that opportunity then. And so I went down to MacDill, and I spent 3 years on a Gulfstream, military variant of a Gulfstream. And I met 4-star generals and heads of our nation's leadership. And I took them to conferences and got to know their team, and just had amazing experiences doing more traveling, but, slowing down. That's where I was in the right position to meet my husband. I got arranged. I joke that we were an arranged marriage, but if I had been doing what I was doing where I was before, I wouldn't have been ready. Right. And I was ready then, and all of the things that worked together. So we spent 3 years down there. We had our son down there, and they said, our squadron's closing. You got to go somewhere else. Yeah. And we were just like, all right, God, is this our exit plan? Right. And he said, no, I'm not finished with you yet. All right. And we got the opportunity to interview again for Air Force One. And I got selected. I got put on a short list, and they invited me to come fly with the president's airplane. And you don't say no to that. Like, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so we said, yeah. And so we went up, and we got there in 2019. So right before COVID happened. Okay. We were there as they were doing the re-election campaign. And so everything was starting to go really, really fast. Like, the month of February specifically, I was away from my house for 16 days. Yeah. And then when I was home, I was working about 10 hours probably, like prepping for the next mission. So it was just like killer pace. And obviously COVID and all that slowed us down, but that was just an unbelievable experience. Yeah. And we started to get to a point, though, towards the end of our time there, where it's like, the squeeze is not worth the juice that we're getting anymore. Mm-hmm. Something is wrong. Something is not right. Like, we say it's our desert time. Yeah. Like, we were just in a desert, and we were just crying out. And I remember I was having our disagreement with my leadership, basically, which is like the nice way of putting it, whatever. You're not supposed to have disagreements with your leadership in the military.
That's right. In the military, yes, sir.
Yeah,
no, sir.
I was called a pit bull more than once, which is not, some people don't think it's a compliment. I do view it as a compliment because it means I'm tenacious.
Yes.
Leadership doesn't always like tenacious people.
No.
And so Jason just said, is it worth it?
Yeah,
like, why do we think this is working? Obviously, this isn't working.
Right.
And so we took some time to pray about it, and I felt God say, like, yeah, this is your exit.
Yeah.
And then, like, I was a diehard. I'm going to do more than 20 years. You're going to kick me out.
Yeah.
I'm going to go so far.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a chief master sergeant. I'm going to commission. I'm going to do all these things. And, like, I was studying to commission.
Yeah.
And I was working that process. And I just was studying. I was, like, trying to study. I was trying to get motivated. I was like, God, why is this not working? Why do I not want to study? Because I always, like, for promotion tests, you couldn't get me to stop. Like, I knew what I had to do. And I just couldn't get into it. And I was like, God, why? And he's like, it's not what I have for you.
Right.
This isn't it.
Right.
This isn't it. And so we got out.
Yeah.
We pulled the cord, and luckily we were in a position where we could, because I had just had our second child, and there was a provision you can get out of the military if you have a baby. And so we used it.
Yeah.
And I went from like mid-July coming in one day after I'd been on some leave and praying about it with Jason. And I said, hey, guess what? I'm getting out.
Yeah.
Bye.
Right.
And it was just, people were like, whoa.
Yeah.
Not you? Like, come on. And so that was mid-July, and then we were gone early December.
Yeah.
Which, in military time, that's fast. People spend years getting ready to get out of the military. Like, that's a year process for most people.
Right.
And I was like, no.
Well, we've shared stories. I mean, I've kind of have a similar one where I actually had re-upped.
Yeah.
And then realized God was like, I didn't ask you to do that.
Yeah.
And to try to get out, and how much they held up my paperwork for uniforms. I needed to turn in so many uniforms, this problem and that problem, right? Which were nothing, but because of their process,
you got to check
it.
Takes
forever. Yeah.
And luckily, like, I knew the right people who knew the right people. And one of my mentors who I'd met at MacDill, he and I had been talking back and forth as I was like trying to weigh the decision. And I finally said, yeah, I'm going to do it. My paperwork got stuck at someone's desk. And he said, okay. Yeah. And then 2 hours later, I got an email. My paperwork wasn't stuck anymore. Yeah. Because he knew the guy to move it. And so I would say, hey, I submitted this paper. And 2 hours later, it would be through. Like, it was just, you talk about doors opening. Yeah. Like, it was crazy.
Well, I think it's the orchestration of God. And you said something that was really interesting. You said the juice that we were getting wasn't worth the squeeze.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that people deal with is trying to figure out exit strategy. When is it time?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a good way to look at it. What I don't want people to ever hear is like, well, this is hurting, so I need to get out. No, sometimes the squeeze is necessary.
Yes.
I read something the other day talking about what ministry really is somebody getting the blessing out of your crushing.
Yeah.
That God.
Don't tell me that.
Right. Oh. She's like, I'm going to
ministry school. That's not what I want to know.
But that's what it is that when God works on you, and we see Genesis, Revelation, we see the same thing, right? God works on men and women, and he crushes them. And what he's doing is trying to get the imperfections out and other things, and others will benefit from that crushing.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's the one side to say, hey, when you're getting crushed, is not that it's a bad thing, but if you're getting crushed and there's no production in that crushing, that's the point. The juice is not worth the crushing anymore. I may steal that one from you.
Oh, it's great.
Right.
I stole it from someone else. So.
There you go. There we go. I'll forget who I heard it from, and then it'll become mine. Well, Pastor James said, no, I think to look at our lives in that mindset and say, okay, God, is it time? Is this my time to get out? Is this my time to transition? Is this my time to pivot? And not just because it's hard, because some of the hardest seasons we have can actually be some of the most producing seasons.
Yes, for sure.
I recently talked with someone about that, and she's in a massive crushing season. It just ended it, and I'm like, but look at the production for others.
Yeah.
And too often we look at ourselves and say, well, I'm not seeing the fruit of my labor. But then I'm like, if you look at the people around you, look at what's happening. I'm not hearing from God. And yet you're able to speak into other people's lives like never before. it's in those moments you say, okay, well, the crushing is worth every ounce I'm getting out of it because it's benefiting other people. And if we could live our lives in that mindset, say, okay, God, is this my time to leave? And then to recognize that you and your husband are both sensing the same thing, which is important.
Yeah.
That there's that unity there to say, yeah, it is time. My wife and I, as we transitioned from our last pastorate, you know, that was the thing, is like we've been crushed a lot. And we started seeing that lack of production, but then to talk between us and say, are you in agreement that this is the right season? You know, and then we make those moves. And what's so incredible about that is you look back and you don't regret, because you see that God had worked in that moment. Yeah. And I think too many people, they leave too quickly because it hurts. And can I tell you, the hurting is not a bad thing sometimes. And I could tell you story upon story in my own life of the worst moments of my life. I've got a story where I lost 30 pounds in 30 days because of a crushing that happened. I thank God for that moment today, that season of my life today. I didn't back then, but I can look back and see it. So I'm sorry.
I mean, no, I think that's absolutely valid. Like, I know people who I feel like they pulled the ripcord too soon, and I caution them. I was like, I feel like you just got to get through it. It's a hard season. I know, just try to stay the course. And they're like, I can't. Yeah. I'm like, okay. And you see that all the time. You see it in small ways too. Just like people running a PT test. Yeah. You're like, it's a mile and a half. Right. You just have to embrace the suck for a little. Like, can I say that? Is that okay? You just have to, do it for a little bit. And then it's over. And then you watch people who they just stopped. Right. It's like, you got to keep going. Like, it's almost over. Yeah. You got to keep going. Yeah. I know for us, so like, we were not in that season. We weren't seeing anything. Right. And you know, I'm getting bothered. I'm getting whatever talked down to because of these little things that are. I'm like, what are we doing? Are we fighting a war? Are we winning a war based off of this? Like, no. Yeah. This is about your ego. This is about power. Like, this is not. No, I'm not. This isn't why I joined. This isn't what I'm here for. I'm sorry. Like, I can't. And I appreciate the season that we were there. Yeah. I appreciate what I got to see and do, what my family got to see and do and experience. Like, I mean, that's once in a lifetime. Oh, yeah. Right. But I also think every time I see that jet somewhere else, I think, ooh, I'm glad it's not me. Have fun. Well, I think, one of the phrases I've heard before, and I love it, is divine discontentment. Yeah. You know, and that happens and should happen if we're relating to God and we're putting everything before God and saying, you know, let your kingdom come, your will be done, that God will bring those moments. And so often they're the nitpicky things that begin to happen, and they don't make sense. And you wonder what's going on here. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the sensitivity with the Spirit, with God, and saying, God, is this you? Is this you in this moment? Why do the things that I've done before, why do they not entice me any longer? I think, I love that story about, testing, and trying to get your rank and go through. I love the study. And then all of a sudden I've lost passion for that. It's in those moments you start going, well, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Yeah. Or is this a God thing to try a divine discontentment in that? Because he's not called you to there. Yeah. I'm going to look at hey, don't be lazy. That's not what I'm saying. But, to understand, okay, man, I don't have that passion anymore. Yeah. God, is this you? Because maybe it isn't God. Maybe it's you. Maybe there's sin in your camp. Oh, and it was ego. Right? I can readily identify it. It was ego. I needed to get that commission and I needed to get that next rank to make sure everybody knew I was worthy. Yeah. I did this by my own sweat. Wow. I did this because look how good I am. Yeah. And I started off as a loadmaster. And I mean, that career field, it is a man dominated career field. Yeah. Yeah. And so to be the only woman in a room most of the time, and then to be, in my early 20s, it was hard. And that brought something out of me that was just like a very sharp edge. Right. And you couldn't tell me nothing. And if you're going to carry one chain, I'm going to carry three. And if you're going to do this, I'm going to do it twice as hard. And everything had to be a competition. I just walked around with boxing gloves on because I was like, oh no, you're not going to get one up on me. I deserve to be here. I deserve my place.
Right.
And like guys are dumb and they'll say dumb things. Oh, you got the vote. You got to promote whatever. And
right.
Like, no,
you're the minority, so you're getting everything.
In your mind that I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And so for me, like getting promoted before all my peers and getting a commission was a way to show everyone around me, like, hey, you can't touch me. I earned it. I did it. You can't touch me now.
It kind of reminds me of, my wife loves baking, cooking shows. My daughter's, in culinary, culinary as well. But it kind of reminds me of so many of the shows that we watch, the female chefs.
Yeah.
Man, they cuss more than the men. They're tougher than the guys because they have to be.
Yeah.
They're trying to prove that we're worthy, which is really funny because if you watch any of those cooking competitions now, the women are beating the men all the time.
Oh, all the time.
And they're finally softening a little bit, and where it doesn't seem like they've got to be rough and tumble as they were. But in that male dominated, and I was thinking through as you're talking. So I served as an aerial porter for 5 years. I don't think I ever worked with one female.
Yeah.
And when you said early 20s, I'm like, they were mostly men. They were all men.
Yeah.
In their 30s.
Yeah.
To get to that level.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine what you had to deal with.
It was pressure. Yeah. And so I remember we did this one trip to DC, and I was the only loadmaster on it. It was just me and 2 pilots. I knew the pilots. We were good friends, as much as, you could be, but we got along well. And we're down there, and I'm getting ready to do the upload, and the master sergeant in charge comes over to me, the aerial porter comes over to me, and he goes, where's your boss?
Yeah.
And I said,
I'm only laughing because I can see that
true.
completely. I know exactly.
And I was like, you want a pilot?
You're the little stewardess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Like, you want a pilot? I can get you a pilot. He goes, no, where's your super? Like, where's the loadmaster?
Yeah.
I said, I am the loadmaster.
Yeah.
You want to deal with a loadmaster? You're gonna have to deal with me.
Right.
And like, he kind of gave me some attitude about it.
Oh yeah.
The pilot came over, and I told him, like, this dude's to me a jerk. Dude. Like, I don't know if I can get this done with him here.
Right.
And my pilot ended up talking to him. I was like, that's my loadmaster. You're going to listen to what she says, or you're going to get off the jet, and I'm going to make a phone call to your command. Like, he was not about to play with it. Because we were loading experimental equipment. Like, this was a serious process, and my command had felt I was capable of doing it. So they sent me.
Right.
That's all that he needed to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so afterwards, like, he kind of came up and like apologized as we were finishing up. He's like, you just look so young. Like, you just look so young. I figured you had to have someone. I mean, you're a senior airman. You had to have someone. I was like, I'm a fully qualified airdrop loadmaster at this point. I'm about to go to instructors. Like, I'm the guy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm the guy. And he's like, I mean, how old are you even? I was like, I'm 21.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. Yeah.
But I am 21.
Yeah.
And I'm in charge of all of it. Like, you have to.
Yeah, but in the military, you got that training, right?
And that's how it works.
And once you get to your levels, your 3, your 5, your 7, right? The different levels. If you know anything about the military or Air Force, right? Once you get there, you're there. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And what was interesting, so in the fire department, I had the same scenario.
Yeah.
Right. To where here I was far advanced, but I was only a senior airman.
Yeah.
And so it was the same thing.
That training and rank don't always.
They don't go hand in hand. So I could be a level 7. Right. But not, which, advanced in the ability, but still not have the rank because I don't have the time.
Yeah.
And then I've got a staff sergeant who's one rank higher than I am, who's my crew chief, that actually doesn't know as much as I know.
Yeah. And you have to submit to that.
And you have to submit to that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's super fun.
Yeah.
And part of that, it's so funny now looking at like the puzzle when it's done,
Right.
Or half done, I guess. But Jason, my husband, would not have wanted anything to do with me when I was a loadmaster because I was like kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
Because I kind of had to be. I kind of had to be a jerk to survive in the world that I was in. And he said straight up before, he goes, I don't know if I would have wanted to marry you.
Yeah.
Because I hear your stories. You had an edge. I was like, oh, I didn't have an edge. I had a double edge. Like, I was wielding a sword and I was ready to slice anyone in my way.
Right,
like, it was not a small chip.
Yeah,
it was a big chip.
Yeah.
And so I got called out of that and I got shoved into being a flight attendant, which is the total opposite. It's all very delicate. It's all very political. We're going to use a quiet voice.
Yeah.
We're going to, say please and thank you. We're going to fold our hands when we talk.
Yeah.
It's, very
Wow.
Tame.
Yeah.
Very tame,
Yeah.
I'll say. And so, I'm like trying to get this bag in place. I'm lifting a bag in a weird way. I'm trying to get it in place. And my instructor's like, you're making a lot of noise while you're loading that bag,
Yeah.
and it sounds aggressive. You need to control that more. Like, if you think this is aggressive, you don't want to know me, a year ago or whatever.
That's funny.
But all that had to get cut out.
Yeah.
All of that edge
Yeah.
had to be tamed. So then I could go to someplace even more prim and proper
Right.
and get that experience, and then get released back into the civilian world
Yeah.
without being
Yeah.
a total jerk to everyone.
And having lived in both worlds now.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you Jason and you figure out, man, it's time for us to leave.
Yeah.
What comes next?
I told my mom.
Yeah.
And
Did you tell her the same thing as you told her before? God said, so don't argue.
I called her. Like we were maybe halfway through the decision making, like pray about it process. And I'm like, Jason, I'm dying. I gotta tell my mom. Like, I'm dying. I can't keep this secret. She can pray with us. And he goes, you know what she'll say. she'll say, oh, God said, come home. And so I told her, and she just goes, oh, okay. Well, that's nice. I'll pray for you.
Yeah.
I'm like, what type of reaction is that?
Right.
And then at the end of the week, we told her, and she goes, oh, I was just so nervous to get my hopes up. I just and she was thrilled.
Yeah.
I told my leadership, and I was pretty transparent with them. I said, this isn't worth the cost to my family. This isn't worth the cost to my mental health. Because it's so dumb. It's so dumb looking back now. I was like jumping every time my phone rang or every time my phone dinged.
Mm-hmm.
I was like jumping, like a PTSD level reaction to my stupid work phone.
Right.
Because it was going to be, you're in trouble for this. Your troop did this. How dare you make this change without consulting me 15 times, even though I already said it was okay. Like, we need to throw out that work you did and try again. We need a new lineup. It was all this stuff. And that was for Jason, I think that was a big point of like, as soon as we started praying about it, he was like, you don't jump at your phone anymore.
Yeah.
And that's big.
Yeah.
That's a big change. Like, that's a sign. And we just asked our church to pray with us. We asked anyone we could, like, please pray. We don't know what to do, because this is a huge decision. This is giving up my retirement. I was 10 years in when it was 11 when I finally got all the way out, but it was 10 years when we started the process. Like, I'm giving up halfway to a really nice retirement and a cushion for my family. This is a big decision, and what are we gonna do? And it was a lot.
Right.
And it just all kind of fell into place. Because God was good with it. I transitioned. I was trying to go into the reserves, and that didn't work out. I ended up having 1 month of time where I wasn't in the military technically, and ended up sliding into the Air National Guard. I ended up getting a position in my dad's unit, when the unit he retired out of. He retired at 60, and he loved the unit. He's active with their alumni, and I ended up sliding into the unit, and that's where I'm at today. And
that's cool.
They're the people I needed. Like, it's the position I needed. And just using their generosity and their mentorship to try to figure out the next step, whether that's going straight over to commission as a chaplain after everything's done, or if that's working as an enlisted religious affairs airman for a time before I commission. Like, that is absolutely the place I needed to be with the people I needed to be. So I fought it, but it was the right door to walk into, and all the other doors had closed.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point, because a lot of times I think people think, like, if God wants me to do this, he's going to make it super easy. That's not how God works.
It'd be nice.
It would be nice. But then we become lazy. And anything that's worth anything is we work for it. And I think when we think through, as you're trying to figure out your next steps, all those, it's asking that question again, like you said, God, is this worth it? God, is this you? God, is right? But then to say, okay, God, is this your will? And I'm not going to take an obstacle as a sign of a no. Because understand, and I mean this with everything in me, there is an enemy, a real spiritual enemy out there. And he is going to want to stop you. And so I think of, if we go back to the Old Testament, Daniel's a great example of a prophet, and at one point talks about angels and wondering why it took so long for an angel to come to his aid. And he said, well, hey, I've been fighting. I've been fighting this other angel, right? I've been fighting this demon basically to get here, because their spiritual warfare is absolutely real. So when we see hardships, when we see issues, persecution, we don't automatically say, well, it's not God.
No.
We say, okay, God, is this you, or is this something I've got to get through?
Yeah.
Because one thing about God, he doesn't change his mind.
No.
And so if he told me, hey, I want you to go here, he's not going to tell me tomorrow, I made a mistake, I want you to go here. Yeah. He's going to tell me something, and if that's a destination, he wants me to get to that destination. Now the route I take may be different.
40 years in a desert wandering around.
Exactly. Yeah. And caused by myself.
Yes.
But eventually God will still get me. He never, and that's such a great example, because God never changed his plan for the Israelites. He never once. He still wanted them. He said, but you guys are so obstinate, such stiff-necked people.
I can't even imagine.
Right? Exactly. Just like all of us, that you're going to take all this time to get through.
Yeah.
But his promise was never changed. The destination never changed. This is your promised land. This is where I want you to go. So God doesn't change that.
No.
And it's those obstacles that we face that either strengthen us. They take, I think one of my favorite scriptures, iron sharpens iron, right? Sometimes just getting some of the weeds off, getting some of the things that we need to lose. And which, again, is such a great example of your story when you're talking about you had to go from loadmaster to flight attendant to get some of that hardness off of you so that you could be ready for the season to meet Jason and to move forward. God utilizes those moments, those teaching moments sometimes to either change our character or teach us something about ourselves. Why? Because he knows the eventual destination for us. And, my story a little bit, so I went into work for an electrical distributor in credit collections, which I knew nothing about. It was a really interesting season, but I morphed into change management is the best way to put it. Right. So basically, lean process, Sigma, if you guys, anybody knows about that, as a green belt. So going into either organizations, whether we owned or acquisitions that we were buying. We're a Fortune 400 company, very large, traveling all over North America. And I'd go into these companies and fix them and or tell the CEO, hey, this is what we need to keep. This is who we need to fire. This is what, those kind of things. And here I'm in pastoring. I was a youth director for the state of or the region, which was called the Great Lakes at that point. And then traveling 2 weeks out of the year or 2 weeks out of the month, and just fighting with God. God, what are you doing here? That doesn't make any sense. Look at how hard I'm working. I'm trying to run a church. I'm trying to be a youth director. And then I got to do all this other stuff. And when I'm at work, I think about church. When I'm at church, I think about work. What are you doing? And then, so fast forward, after 11 years of that, I moved full time into pastoring, and the first church I become the pastor of, I merged two churches into one.
Oh, change management.
Guess what I've done for the last 11 years? It's like, I see you, God. God used all those moments to train me to get to the point where I could take what I learned in the secular world. They paid for all that training. They paid for every bit of that.
All that refining.
Right?
Paid for.
And here I come into this moment, and we merged the church 2.6 miles away from each other, same side of the street, total different demographics. One was very racially diverse. The other one was all Caucasian, older, to bring them together. And, we didn't lose a soul for a year.
Yeah.
That's unheard of.
Yeah.
Everybody was telling me, all the leadership, the state was telling me, you just know that you're going to lose probably half the people.
Yeah.
We didn't lose anybody. The first person we lost a year later, they moved out of town.
You don't you can't count that.
2 years,
honestly.
was like 2 hours away.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we're a year, and then the next person we lost because he decided Jimmy Swaggart was his pastor. But that's a longer story. That's weird. If Jimmy Swaggart's your pastor, call him up. Like, if you can call him up and talk to him, then he's your pastor. There's nothing wrong with Jimmy Swaggart, right? I'm not saying that, but that's like a side note there. that a pastor is someone you can call, you can talk to, you know, and
you can email dumb questions in the middle
exactly, which you do, which I love. All right. And so, I think we look at those seasons in our lives, and if we're paying attention, God works all things out for the good.
Yeah.
Right. So even the hard times and the struggle times, that he's working those through. And I think if we pay attention and we say, okay, I'm hitting a roadblock, this may not be God.
Yeah.
I may have to run over this roadblock.
Yeah.
Or around it or under it. There's something, but God, what is it you desire in this moment? And I think, I listen to your story and you think about just trying to get out of the military, what all those little roadblocks that you probably hit could have been at any point. You could have said, well, this obviously wasn't God. Yeah. And okay, I changed my mind. I'm going to stay in, but having that assured that, no, I know what God said to me.
Yeah.
Because there'll be people in let me say it this way, and this might be hard for some people to hear. There are well-meaning people within the church, within your family relationship, that might tell you differently.
Oh yeah.
But when God has told you something, know that God has told you something.
Yeah. I had someone tell me when I was in basic training, it's not on you if you fail out, basically. Like if you get a failure to adjust discharge, that's a nice way of saying you can't make it in basic training.
Right.
If you get a failure to adjust discharge, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Right.
I was like, well, no, that's not the attitude I'm walking. This is my calling. I'm not walking into it with an attitude that it's okay to fail. Yeah. Like that's not an option for me.
Right.
And when I got out, I kind of wrestled with like, well, who am I now? Yeah. I've been an airman for all this time, trying to figure out how to not be an airman anymore and be a mother and be a wife and then go be a student, all those things. That's way more rewarding to me than being an airman ever was. As much fun as I had being an airman, as much fun as I had wearing the uniform and traveling full-time active duty, my 1 weekend a month that's my mission field now. Yeah. Like, and that's a totally different perspective from what I had before. Because before the military was my career. It's where I worked. It was not my mission field. I'm not talking about religion at work. I'm not starting fights. That person's gay. That person's agnostic. That person's Wiccan. Like, I'm not starting this fight. Yeah. And now I'm like, dude, can you even say that sentence without dropping the F-bomb? No, seriously, try to say that sentence without swearing 5 times. Right. I don't know if you're physically possible.
Yeah. And like, do you have enough intelligence to actually use real words?
Yeah. Can you use a word longer than 4 letters? Do you know any? And like, I kind of give them a hard time and they joke. They're like, oh, you're our mom now. And I'm like, no, I am. I am, because you need a mom, apparently. And one of the guys, like, he started coming with me to the chaplains on Sunday morning. We get an hour of, a service time with them, and he started coming with me. And I'm like, that's a big shift for him. Right. And that's something that's positive. Like that's what I want to do. Yeah. It doesn't matter all the other stuff now.
Right. And I think it's interesting to me because you just said something that piqued my interest, because I think a lot of people quit early.
Yeah.
Right. And to your point, you were talking about running earlier as well, like doing the PT test. It's a mile and a half, dude. Breathe through it. You can be fine. Do it. You can almost walk it and make it.
I don't know. I'm not a good runner. I don't do push-up. It is a hard area for me. If I can do it, you can definitely do it. If I can do it, and I did it like 8 months after having a baby, 9 months after having a baby, you can do it. But I should never be faster than you. You're like 20.
In the Christian world, we quit too easily.
Oh yeah.
I just got done with a message called, Half Inch from Greatness. Mm-hmm. And in talking, Paul writes to the church in Philippi, chapter 3, and he says, I haven't arrived yet. I've not been perfected yet, but this one thing I do is I press on. Yeah. Right. I forget what lies behind, I press on. And Paul was that I'm not going to miss greatness. I'm not going to miss and just stop where I'm at. And I think a lot of Christians, as a pastor, if I can just tell Christians this one thing, push on. Yeah. Push on. Push through the trouble. Push through the issues. In the church world, there is a lot of hurt. But there's also a lot of minuscule, annoying things that it's the enemy just like nitpicking.
Oh, yeah.
And he's nitpicking to get you so focused on something else that you miss that which God really has for you. Yeah. And then what you end up doing is you end up missing the truth of what God desired for your life, that half inch of greatness, that just all I had to do was push a little harder and I would have saw the fruition of what God desired for my life, and your life. And I think if I won't say most of us, but I think if a lot of Christians would really look at their own lives and say, why am I where I'm at this moment? It's the decisions you've made. And those decisions you've made are either ones that you've made with God or without God.
Yep.
And for you, what I'm hearing you say, and I can say the same thing, I'm not content with where I'm at, but I have joy where I'm at.
Yes.
And what I mean by not content is I know I've not made it yet. I have not arrived to where God desires, but I have the joy because I'm excited on the path that I'm at.
Yeah.
When we came here 3 years ago, this is not the place we wanted. We wanted to move back to Oregon. Knew we were moving back to Oregon. I would have bet money on it. I never bet money. I knew. I called my best friend, said, dude, I'm coming home, man. Coming to Oregon. And I get the call. I'm like, Ohio, that's the wrong
O.
direction. It's the wrong O completely. Columbus, are you kidding me? I don't regret a minute of it.
Yeah.
Why? Because I asked God, is this what you want? God, it's not what I want, but it's is it what you want? And I shared this with the church a couple of weeks ago. I'm at home for the first time in years. I've been out of the Oregon area for too long, now going almost 20 years. I miss the Pacific Northwest. I love it there, but to be able to say I'm at home only because I've made decisions based on what God wants for my life.
Yeah.
The move from Washington to Chicago here, right? All the pastoring, all the stuff I did in the Chicagoland area, and then coming here, none of them were my decision.
Yeah.
And right, because my decision would be I'm in Oregon.
Oh yeah.
I'd go
my decision would be
there.
I'm still a loadmaster in Charleston, South Carolina, hanging out on a beach. But that's not what God had.
But I don't regret it.
Yeah.
Why? Because I put Him in charge and said, okay, God. Not that I've not made mistakes. I've made plenty of them. But the great thing is God has always orchestrated through those.
He's already
moments.
compensated for
That's
our
right.
mistakes along the way.
I always say God's like on plan Z with me. A, B didn't work, and then I'm finally on Z. And He goes, okay.
Yeah.
I still have a couple more for you, a couple more plans. Yeah. So here you are. You found a home.
Yeah.
You found a home church. I hope. You
going
email,
on a year and a half now.
Yeah. Oh wow, has it been that long? That's crazy. I love you and Jason kids. They crack me up. In fact, your daughter, middle daughter, hugged me on Sunday.
Yeah.
It was the cutest moment in the world. So just cracked me up because I'm just standing at the door and all of a sudden I feel this little body and she's just on my knees and I'm looking down. Oh, hi. And she just hugged me, right? And just walked off smiling,
She's come out of her shell here. She used to be just like clung to me and now she's running all over the church.
It's so cool. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed, and you kind of joked about it, is your emails to me, right? Yeah. So you're going through the Master's of Divinity, and I kind of reached out to you a little bit and said, hey, if there's anything I can do, right? And someone who's been through that, someone who's going through the doctorate program right now, I understand it's hard. Yeah. It is not easy.
Yeah.
You have not only the work itself, but then you have the spiritual.
Oh, and that's the hardest part.
Yeah, people don't understand.
That's the hardest part. Yeah,
they don't understand it. But one of the things that you do is you email me questions. Can we talk just a minute about that a little bit?
Yeah. I have a lot of dumb questions, and that's how most of my emails start. Is I've got questions, and there's so many of them, and it's like I find myself wanting to talk about this stuff now more and more.
Right.
Which I have my bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
I would never talk to you about my business classes or my leadership classes from my bachelor's degree.
Right.
It just didn't, whatever. It's just this thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, well, now if this happened and then did this happen or how does this all work together? Right. And it's just all the things that God is revealing.
Yeah.
And it's all of the things that God is showing me in myself too. And teaching me. And it's, looking at the Israelites in the desert thinking, oh, you dummies, what are you doing? And God going, hey, remember how? And I was like, oh, I'm the dummy. I'm a dummy too.
Right.
Okay. And just like learning so much more about it. It's hard. It's not what I thought I would be doing with 3 kids at the house and homeschooling and everything else.
Right.
And when God called me and said, hey, you need to go get your degree. You need to go get your master's. I said, yeah, God, 5 years when all the kids are in school and they're like out of the house for 8 hours a day. No problem. No problem. He's like, no.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
now, please, now. And I kind of fought with him and I was like, why? Just tell me why. If you just tell me why, I'll do it. No problem. But tell me why. He said, that's not obedience.
Yeah. Oh,
Obedience requires trust.
Oh, that's good.
And that's not obedience.
Yeah.
Like, you can't argue with that.
Right.
And then, the women's group was doing the study on the armor of God and talked about girding. You got to gird up to go into battle. And God said, you need to gird up your need for control so you can walk in the plan that I have.
Yeah.
You got to gird that up and you got to put on your trust.
Right.
All right, fine. And so I just kind of stopped asking, like, why am I doing that? I just stopped asking. Like, you're gonna tell me one day, fine.
Yeah.
And then I was just having a conversation with my supervisor at Guard. It wasn't even like a meaningful conversation, just like a throwaway conversation. And he said, yeah, you should go be a chaplain.
Yeah.
And God was just like, hey, there you go.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? No, God, you don't want me to be a chaplain.
Right.
It's like, no, I've really prepared this for you. Like, and he has. I got the opportunity to work as a group level exec. So I was an enlisted executive to a group commander. So I have pretty refined administrative skills, which you need as a chaplain. You need all that planning. You need all that coordination.
Right.
And all of the things that God has done in my life, all of the seasons where, we were squeezing really hard, but we actually did get juice.
Yeah.
All of those seasons have worked together now to bring us here. And just the stories that God has given me, the stories of our aircraft is about to, we lost, Mom, don't listen to this part. We lost all the avionics or, we have no screens, we have no computer in a airplane. That's what they run on.
Right.
But we didn't, I'm still here.
Yeah.
It magically all came back on.
Right.
It's not magic.
Yeah. It's not magic, but
all those things. Almost dying in a car crash, but not.
Yeah.
Almost, we suffered a miscarriage and that, talk about crushing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That crushed me.
Right.
That crushed me to the point where I did not think I was going to get back up, but lo and behold, I sure did.
Here you are.
And here I am. And I've got that juice from that crushing that I get to share now with other
so
women.
many others that are dealing with it. Yeah.
So many other women who have to deal with that. And it gives me a perspective I never would have had.
Right. Right.
Not just in miscarriage, but in surviving what I used to say was, that's not survivable.
Yeah.
How do you survive that? How do you
the thing
come
that's
back?
going to devastate you to the point where there's destruction.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing left to rebuild. How do you get past that?
Right.
Oh, I know how you get past that now.
Yeah.
And like even witnessing healing, like my husband is lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
He drank eggnog last night.
Yeah.
And he didn't die. Like
right.
He's healed from being lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
What a dumb thing. Like why would God care about him being lactose intolerant?
Of all the things he could heal.
Of all the things he could be doing in the world, he chose to heal him.
Right. Right.
So that he could have a more full life. So that he can walk into whatever room he has to walk into and not be worried about.
Yeah. What's in that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's a silly thing, but that's real.
Well, but to God, it's not silly.
It's not silly to God.
He cares about the most minor things in our lives.
Yeah.
And man, it's incredible to me. I think, you make so many great points, but when we think about that, he's so involved in all those and he orchestrates all these things together to try to put them into place so that when you look, you could say, you know what, I do trust you, God.
Yeah.
Because that's what he desires.
Yeah.
If he is really the loving father, Jesus said, call him Abba, Father, like an intimate dad. Hey, daddy, then we should be able to trust him. And if he's going to tell us, hey, go and do, I don't need to know the why, to your point. I don't need to know the why. I'm going to go and do. And one of the things I love to share with new ministers specifically is that we are not held accountable for the response of individuals. We're held accountable for what we say.
Yeah.
Right. Did we go and do what God said? So I did. We went and nothing happened. Okay. When I go to heaven, God's going to give me a thumbs up. Way to go.
Yeah.
But I'll be like, but God, I didn't see any production. It's not yours to produce.
Yeah.
It's yours to do. And I think we learn that in the trusting moments because I don't need to know the why.
Yeah.
I don't have to have that. And the other thing, and we'll kind of end with this because I think it's an interesting point based on really my last episode. I had Troy in here. Troy is someone I mentor, and we talked about the mentorship relationship. You've mentioned mentors multiple times as we've been talking. they're so necessary. And that's where I see the email, is that opportunity for me to speak into something that you're thinking through.
Yeah.
A trusted, I hope you trust me, right?
I wouldn't be emailing you if I didn't.
Right. A trusted individual to be able to speak into that situation. Yeah. And one of the things that Troy and I talked about last week, which I think is really cool, is that when Troy and I meet weekly, we walk away, we're both edified. We're both encouraged through that. And it's not just me telling him, okay, Troy, this is how you fix your life.
Yeah.
It's us inviting God in to speak into that moment, iron sharpening iron, this moment where I grow as well. And I think of an email that you'd sent me about apologetics, really is what it was about. How do we as Christians go and talk to other people of other religions if we don't know what they even believe?
Yeah.
And that really challenged me to relook at the direction of not the church, but the direction of how we've been teaching, and knowing that there's a couple things within the church I really want to focus on. We're going through the book of Acts right now. Next, we're talking about the gifts of the Spirit. But then in that, it's all about going and giving life, going in and making disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So challenging me. So, you look at what you think is a dumb question is actually God using that dumb question to say, hey, remember, this is part of what I need you to focus on.
Oh, you're going to love my next email then.
Awesome. Right. And so I just really challenge people, to find mentors, find individuals that have been there, done that. I've been through my master's, I've been working my doctorate. So, I'm somebody that has been there, done that.
Yeah.
Actually graduated, wow, with honors. And so to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm thinking. What is it? And I love this. This last one you emailed me about John, who the author of John was, and you're like, what are other things that I can be reading, on that? And I think it's finding those individuals, hopefully godly people. That's what godly people. Stop listening. I about said the name of the girl, but you can't say it because I'm Taylor Swift. Stop listening to Taylor Swift. I'm gonna say it. Getting myself in a lot of trouble now. I got the haters.
I'll tell you, that was how. That's a sign. Because when I had my miscarriage, she had a song come out that was about a miscarriage.
Yeah.
And instead of He Weeps With Me, and the Christian artists who have a point, and God does weep with us. Yeah. Here I am with this. Yeah. Because that's the environment I was into. And they were all listening to that song. I was like, this song means something to me right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't listen to Taylor Swift. I'm redeemed. I've changed my ways.
I've been saved. But I think far too often that's the problem is we listen to non-Christians. Yeah. And it's logical. God is not logical. Because his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are greater than our thoughts, So I think it's just such a big thing to find individuals that you can share with. And throughout your story, I've heard you multiple times talk about these mentors, these individuals, and you may not have a relationship with them ever again, but in that season, in that moment,
they carried me.
Yeah. And I think far too few of us have those individuals. I have a couple of people that I know I can reach to at any moment, reach out to and say, hey, help me out here. Help me understand this, but then I have those seasons where I can point to specific individuals that help me through that season. Have I talked to them in 20 years? No. Will I ever talk to them again? No. But in that season, I had those. So I don't know who you are today, but find somebody, to help you through, to see through the struggles. Any kind of final words as you kind of think through just your life in general?
I would say that He weeps with us. That's something that has really been heavy on my heart lately as we've been going through the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead. Yeah. And it's like, Jesus knew the end of the story. Jesus knew that He was about to raise Lazarus from the dead and they were going to have a party and everything was going to be great. He knew that. Right. But that didn't stop Him from sitting at the tomb and weeping. Yeah. Because I think my own theology of it is He saw the pain of everyone around Him who He loved. Right. And He knew that they were about to experience the same pain again when He went to the cross. Yeah. And He weeps with us. Right. And He does. And He knows the end of the picture. He knows our miracle is coming. Yeah. He knows what the final picture looks like. But that doesn't stop Him from weeping with us. And not being like, oh, come on, it's fine. Right. Brush it off. It's fine. Be okay tomorrow. I got to answer. No, He stops and He weeps with us. Yeah. And that's His answer.
and how powerful to wrap your story up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what a powerful image to understand that when you were being crushed, he was being crushed. He felt it.
Oh,
he
yeah.
experienced it. He was there in it. It's not God with a magnifying glass trying to burn ants.
No.
You know,
No, yeah.
it's a God that's intimate, that's in that moment. So, you know, hey, if you're out there today and you're dealing with those struggles, understand God is there with you.
Yeah.
He's along the whole ride with you.
Oh, yeah.
But what he's trying to do is bring greatness out of you, take you into areas that you would have never imagined, into places that you would have never even thought of that you would experience. But at the end of the day, to be able to look back and say, what a great puzzle that you put together. What a great picture. So, hey, thank you for joining us, Slice of Life. Follow us on all the social media networks, basically, wherever they're at. Just like, comment. I'd love some of your comments, just asking either questions, subjects that you want to talk about, things that you want to think about, whether you like me or you don't like me. Go ahead and comment. I don't care. I do care. I hope you like me. But just as we go through, because I think one of the things that we all need as Christians, we need to fill ourselves more with who God is, and to know that God weeps with us.